Well, Doreen joins us now alongside Hetty Barkworth-Nanton from the women's charity Refuge and former probation officer Sarah Edwards, who can explain how that process works. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Doreen, thank you for coming in to talk to us. And, you know, I know this is hard for you, isn't it? So we really appreciate you being here. And I know that this is the day that you prayed would never come, isn't it?
I didn't think it would ever come, no. And I feel totally let down by the parole board primarily and the justice system. The parole board, I mean, the start of it all was at the hearing. It was a public hearing. I was the applicant and I wanted him to face the public. And as a consequence, he has got these rights where he can't appear in, he can choose whether to appear on camera or speak. And he did neither, so we didn't see him. And, I mean, some people, the media from the North East, they cancelled the place at the hearing because of that.
Right.
And so we didn't see or hear him speak. What we did hear was the parole board panel questioning the witnesses, like the prisoner offender manager and the psychologists and community offender manager. And we were shocked to hear that he's still preoccupied with sex, as he was in 1997. And yet, this man's going to be let out.
So what are your fears over what might happen with that? Because obviously there will be certain conditions put in place. He'll be on licence for the rest of his life, won't he, as part of this? But what do you worry will happen?
Oh, that once he will reoffend. Once he's been out a while, once he gets rid of his tag, and I don't think he'll comply with all the licence conditions, because he was 23 when he went in, and he's 50 now, and he's preoccupied with sex. So you can see the way I'm thinking of what's going to happen.
I was surprised. I didn't know the detail. I think many of our viewers will be that that he didn't get a whole life sentence, because since the early 1980s, in a very serious crimes like this, terrible crimes, that is available. But he pleaded guilty, didn't he?
He pleaded guilty,
trial,
so
and that's why it was 18 years.
Yeah, and it knocks a third off or something of the sentence if they plead guilty. But I never ever thought he would ever get out because of what he'd done, even though his sentence was 18 and then 20 and then back to 18
And this is the fifth hearing. So there's been previous times where they've looked at the evidence and said it's not safe.
Yes.
And now they've changed their minds.
Well, the community offender manager has assessed him as high risk. And that's public. That is in the redacted decision summary. High risk, and the parole board themselves, medium risk. Now, that message to the public says, what on earth are they thinking about?
Gosh.
And there's an issue, isn't there? I mean, Hetty, if I pick up with you, because he has admitted rape but wasn't actually convicted of that, was he? And then there are concerns about the fact that he's therefore not on the sex offenders register as a consequence.
That's right. So he's not on the sex offenders register, although, you know, they are, I believe, looking at ways in which they can effectively replicate that through other measures. But it's really, really important that the Ministry of Justice are really on top of that and make sure it happens. I think the other fear that people will have, and particularly those who are, again, families waiting for people, for perpetrators, be it of murder or serious offences, to go through the parole board, is I think the assumption has always been that you go to an open prison before you go out into the community. And in this case, he's going straight from a closed prison out into the community. He's skipping the open prison system. And I think that's a real concern to victims and survivors.
Sarah, you qualified, I think, 10 years ago as a probation officer, so you know the system really well, and you'll understand kind of how upsetting this is. We've had the Justice Secretary ask the parole board to reconsider, and they've stuck with their original decision. Just explain what will have been in front of the parole board. Who are they? What's in front of them? What process do they go through? Why would they arrive at this decision to release when in the past they haven't done so?
Yeah, so there is a really stringent process that is in place, and there's 3 panel members on a parole board, I think in this particular case, one of which was a psychologist, but they're independent experts, and they review all the information from the psychiatrists, the prison psychologists, the prison offender manager. Yes, they look at the significant crime and the significant harm that he caused, but part of their process is also to look at, OK, what core work has he done in prison on his offending, so his attitudes, his beliefs. He's been in a therapeutic community. So it's not necessarily that they've changed their mind. They've looked at the information and, you know, at all those 5 reviews, he would have been given recommendations for, OK, before the next review period, you need to do X, Y and Z to satisfy that you are safe. So it's not a change of mind, it's more, OK, we feel satisfied since the last review, you have done these kind of core risk reduction work.
I suppose the worry is, from hearing that, in a sense, that it's kind of a tick box thing, that they're sort of saying, OK, he's said this, he's not said that. But actually, I know this is the point that Doreen's made, once he gets out then in the real world and has greater contact with women and is back in that environment, things could change, and there's concern about what level of monitoring there is, what level of accountability there is. It's going to be his word, isn't it, as to what he's doing and how he's doing things.
Yeah. So, again, I know a lot of weight was placed on the psychologist's report. So they would look for things like, you know, avoidance. You know, is he avoiding contact with his offender manager? Isolation? Because they're things that maybe the public wouldn't look at, that might think, OK, his risk is increasing, but they are things that the probation officer would look at to see, OK, you know, how... Because you can't monitor everyone 100%.
No, of course not. So, Doreen, do you have faith in the process then and how that will work?
No, because he's done all the work that he can do for his case in prison. All the boxes are ticked. But they, to me and everybody else, that don't stand back and look at the man, what he did in 1997, what he's capable of, what he's still doing now in prison, preoccupation with sex, sending somebody out like that. And he's been a good boy in prison, which I'm told is common for serious offenders to behave. So he will reoffend.
But you're saying you think the parole board, which is the psychologist, a judge, you think that they're basically being duped by him, being fooled?
Yeah. Because he's been nice all the time in prison, so he's just nice all the time.
Shouldn't they be good enough to spot that?
Well, you would think so, yes.
Yes. I think the key thing that is missing here, and it really is missing in the case of Doreen's case, is that victims of the crime have very little, if any, voice, very little, if any, agency, and no support to take them through this process. So they are very much a secondary, even a probably tertiary voice in the context of the parole system, and
even
that's
the
being able to
even the Justice Secretary, she said, look at it again, they said no.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but
what do you think about that?
She's lost her power by not actioning the Victims and Prisoners Bill. I sent her an email on September the 24th asking why hadn't she actioned it. 2 days later...
This is a change, it's new legislation,
yeah, Alex
but it's
Troll
not
brought it in.
currently active.
No. It's going to take a while, is it?
And it's going to take a while before she can... But it was funny that she obviously came up against my case, and then 2 days later, after I sent the email, I got an email back to say she'd actioned it.
And what
but it's going to take too long.
And what new power will that give her, do you know?
To take it to the High Court, go to the High Court.
So do you have any other means now of appealing against this, of having your say? This is...
I would like to have a meeting with the Justice Secretary to discuss how poorly treated we are, the experience that I've had, so we can work towards improving it.
Just that process.
Because it's been both the parole board, because we fall off the cliff in their processes, with deadlines and everything. We weren't allowed to know their name when we read our victim personal statement. In the private section before the hearing, they wouldn't release their name, and our victim personal statements are highly confidential and private. How it's affected my husband and I,
just huge.
marriage,
of course.
3 years of marriage when this happened, and we refused.
Sarah, are there reasons why the parole board doesn't give more voice and attention and strength for victims?
I don't know the specific reasons. All I can say is, like, in my experience, yes, they have a victim impact, but it doesn't seem enough from a victim's perspective. And as a probation officer who is putting forward those decisions, we can't make our final recommendation. We can be aware of it.
Dawn, it sounds like you need a meeting with the Justice Secretary in order to tell her
the
to
reason
sort it
that
out.
they wouldn't give her their names was they said it was public parole hearing rules. Now, when I took it up, because I've got a complaint procedure in with the chair and CEO of the parole board, and they said, it's up to the individual panel member whether they choose to give their name out of respect. What about the respect to me?
I know.
And can I just say, particularly when it's about violence against women and girls, and particularly when it's about violence against women and girls, victims and survivors feel really anxious about this stuff because it's so close to
and how
home.
it might affect others as well.
And this is why we need that meeting with the Justice Secretary to talk about the wider changes that are needed to give victims and survivors much better agency, a much stronger voice.
We need you to come back on the programme as well. After you had the meeting with the Justice Secretary, you need to come back.
Yeah, I will.
Tell us what said
I will.
And whether it's going to change.
I will. Yes, I will.
A spokesperson for the parole board has said to us that they are solely focused on the risk a prisoner could represent to the public and whether that risk is manageable in the community. Parole reviews are undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. They say protecting the public is our #1 priority. And
we also had a statement from the Ministry of Justice who said, we're disappointed with this outcome, but respect the independent parole board's decision. Ling will be unlicensed for the rest of his life with strict conditions and probation supervision after he's released, and he faces an immediate return to prison if he breaks the rules.
So does that give you any comfort that if he breaks any of those rules, he will go back to prison?
Oh, yeah, but as well, I mean, putting it from the offender side, he's been in prison 27 years and he's going straight out.
I know.
Now, how is he going to cope?
And I know...
Because he's in a safe place at the minute, in prison.
You've talked about a bit about the impact that this has had on you, and we know how hard it is. You know, we want to remember your daughter through this, don't we?
Yeah.
And I know that that's important to you.
Yeah, she was such a happy girl, smiling, laughing all the time, a bit naive and too trusting, and only saw the good in the people and not the bad.
I know.
And that was her downfall. And she didn't know this guy. She didn't know him. And in the village,
I think being happy and being trusting and enjoying life is something which should be everybody's
We should
right.
be celebrating.
That's not Joanne's fault. She was a good person.
No, I know. She wanted to travel. She did a stint in Bahrain, but she came back 3 months. She was a hairdresser. And she came back 3 months afterwards because of things that were going on there that weren't very nice for English girls. But she wanted to travel.
You don't want anybody else to
No,
go through what you've gone through to...
It's terrible. I mean, we don't have Christmas anymore because of this.
No.
Can't.
Of course.
It's too painful.
Of course it is.
You know, we were eating our Christmas... people were eating their Christmas lunch when we were identifying Joanne.
Dear me. There'll be lots of...
killed it.
There'll be lots of people watching our programme who will feel hugely for you, but also want to know that for all families of victims, that they're being listened to and things are being done properly. And although it's hard, I know, but the work you're doing and that meeting with the Justice Secretary, you're making things better for other people, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Alex Chalk and I had every confidence in him. A year ago, we went to see Alex Chalk, and he was fully supportive.
Good.
And now it's all changed, you see.
But you've got to keep going.
But I've got to keep going.
Yes.
New MP, new Justice Secretary.
Yes, and then come back and see us. And
yeah, I will. If we
give us
get to see
another
the
update.
Justice Secretary, I asked
I think if she's got any sense, she's going to have a meeting.
Well, I asked for a meeting, you see, as soon as the Cabinet was announced. I was there with an email, July the 7th, I think it was.
Good.
And nothing. I heard nothing.
Well,
and then it was too late because of influence it might have on her decision.
She's going to have a meeting with you, I bet.
Thank you so much.
Well, if you can do anything on that front.
I think you're doing it. I think you're doing it right now on Good Morning Britain.
With what you're saying, you've spoken so well this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.
And I know that this is hard for you, but
Yeah.
she would be proud of you for what you're doing.
Hopefully.
She would.
Never know.
Thank you all for coming in this morning. Thank you. And just to say, if you have been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.